Hello, and welcome back to TOXstream, the live streaming show of Alta Tox Academy, who brings you the voices of the expert on toxicology and science. My name is Matteo, and I'm the host here, as usual, in this very first episode, lunchtime episode, they want to call it, because we switched for once to our normal evening schedule, and we are exceptionally for once at 12:30. But I'm very happy to see that there are people connected anyway. So good, and thank you for linking with us. So this is our I want to say 15th episode, something like that. You should probably know. Meaning we have been around already for quite a while. So good chances that you might have seen already our videos in the past. So maybe you know already what's going to happen and what AltaTox is. In case you don't, I'm going to give you just a very, very quick introduction on us and what's going to happen here. So Alta Tox Academy, we are a Belgian company. We are focused on one specific thing, which is the promotion of alternative methods to animal testing in toxicology. And we do so in many different ways. We work in a European project to develop this method. We have a lot of activity in communication on social media. We produce podcasts. We have educational materials. We even have our board game to explain people what the hell is this about. We also have companies in developing and validating their method. So everything you can have in mind on that. Either we did it, or we are going to do it, or we are doing it. And then we have TOXstream, which is part of these activities, but also something more. In the sense that here, yes, we do talk about toxicology, we do talk about alternative to animal testing, but we also try to talk about science in general and to apply a question that I'm sure everyone had, especially if you're working in science or you worked in science like me, which was when you try to understand something new that you didn't know about, was like, how the hell is this thing working and why it's so goddamn complicated? At least I have this question a lot of times. And when I have this question, I always try to find something on YouTube that explains to me, but a lot of the time is not available. So we thought, well, maybe we can do our own show and invite experts on the topics and ask them if they can explain us what this is all about. And that's the show, that's TOXstream. And that's what we're going to do in the next hour or so. We are going to ask our guest and try to understand better on a specific topic that I'm going to show you in a moment. And you can also chat with them, with our expert at the same time, because we are live on LinkedIn, Twitch, and YouTube. So if you have a question, suggestion, comment, whatever you have in mind, just put it in the comment, and I'm going to do my best to bring it to our guest. So as I said, 15 episodes or something like that. All the videos are on YouTube, but you can find them on our website, altatox.academy.be, together with all the other things that we do. So if you're interested, you can also find our contacts and you can reach out. And with that out of the way, we can jump within the topic that we prepared for you today, which is something that is very close to my heart and is a PhD survival guide, or how to survive a PhD. And it's something that interests me a lot, mostly because, when I was doing my PhD, I would have loved to have that ready, but that was not the case, unfortunately. So we thought, well, you know what, might be too late for me, but maybe we can try to come up together with a series of tips and tricks to help people that are going through very difficult process and training, and discuss a little bit around it. And okay, for me, that I did a PhD, and maybe for people that did a PhD, might be quite clear why this could be useful, but I wanted to try to give you just a few key figures to explain you why I think that indeed talking about this could be useful. And I want to use mostly this publication with the survey that was done by Nature a couple of years ago, where basically they asked a few thousand, 6,000, I think, scientists in their PhD a few questions about it. And as you can see from the title, was some sort of a bitter to sweet results. Right off the bat, what's very interesting is that most of these PhDs were quite happy of doing the PhD, in the sense that they were satisfied of the decision of starting the PhD. So I'm talking about more than 70% of them, which means that it's cool to do a doctorate, apparently. And most of the people were happy about the decision. But when they were asked if this specific satisfaction and motivation changed during the year, well, half of them said that somehow this decreased. Meaning that while doing a PhD seems a good idea for most of them, while they are doing it, there is something that doesn't work as well as they thought. And for some things it's easy. For example, we all know the PhD is a horrible thing in terms of work-life balance in general. And from the same survey, we can see that a vast majority of the people applied that they work more than 41 hours per week, with some of them even saying they work more than 70 and 80 hours, which is probably more than slavery, but in some places, I guess it's called academia. And as you can imagine, this doesn't really help with the satisfaction and the well-being of someone. And not surprisingly, the same thing reflected poorly and negatively on the mental health of these people, because a third of them, 31% of them, also reported to have some sort of mental disorder during their PhD, either depression or anxiety disorders or panic disorders, which is probably 31% more than what we should aim for in a healthy society. And, these are easy problems to identify. We know they exist. Pretty much everybody knows that they exist. There is a lot of awareness, a lot of research, a lot of studies that are done in this sense. So we're talking about it. But maybe we can try to do something concrete at the same time. And that's the reason why we came up with this specific episode. So for these reasons, today, I'm going to say tonight most of the time, but it's probably night somewhere from where you are looking at us, so it doesn't matter. For this reason, today we are going to have a closer look to how we might find a better way to survive a PhD and maybe even enjoy it. And as is tradition, this is pretty much everything I had to say on the topic, because I am not the one that I'm going to do most of the talk, because we selected a couple of guests that are expert on this, on different ways, and we are going to ask them, and hopefully you can ask them as well a few of your questions. So it's time for you to meet our experts. So let me change the camera. Hello. So I'm going to start with the one that I see close to me. Let me move, otherwise it looks like I'm looking in the void. To my left, I see Andrew Stapleton. So first of all, I think you are the guest that comes from the furthest away for TOXstreams, because you are right from Australia. So very far away. Long time experience in academia, PhD, postdoc, more than a decade of experience in chemistry and as a chemist. And then at some point you left academia to become a content creator on YouTube. But I think your channel has a little bit more than 140,000 followers, which is very impressive. And there you actually create a lot of amazing content in trying to help people that are doing academia, not just to be successful and to have a better time doing their studies, but also to enjoy and be happy about what they do, which is amazing. So thank you very much for being here, Andy. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Thanks very much for inviting me, and lovely to meet you too, Wendy.
Hey, hello. Nice to see you.
Perfect. And indeed, our second one is Wendy van der Bulck, Belgian, or at least here in Belgium, like us. Long experience in teaching, so she teach for a long time, and then you moved in a career on training and coaching, especially in the Belgian company TOXstreams, which specialized a lot in working with academic people and scientists. And you have been doing this, if I recall, from 2007, and this has also something to do with horses at some point, which I'm very interested to know what is it all about. But both of you, I think you are a perfect combination to walk us through and find some tips and tricks to help all the people around doing their PhD. So thank you for being here, Wendy, as well.
Hey.
Cool. Okay. So I feel I have a tons of questions to ask you, but let's start easy. I always want to start to know a little bit better, more about you, to getting to know you a little bit better. So I gave you a few words of introduction, but I'm sure you have something more to say. So I'd like to know from you how you ended up doing what you're doing and why you decided to do that. Maybe let's start with Wendy, and then we go with the. I'm gonna say Andrew, because if I say Wendy and Andy all the time,
that will be confusing at times, indeed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's perfect.
Right. So how did I end up here? Going to modify a bit. It's True Colors was originated in 2006, and since then, almost at least 75% of what we have been doing since has been in academia. I joined True Colors as a freelancer in 2014, and of what I have been doing, more than 95% of what I do is within academia. And I really love doing that. I love working with people who are so passionate about their jobs that they risk to fully identify with it, and then work-life balance, etc., becomes at risk sometimes. So it's really, my passion for leadership and self-leadership topics and communication topics brought me here. And also what you said, it's the solution focused approach that TrueColors is working from. That for me is really important, and that's also linked with projects I do next to, and also together with TrueColors, I indeed work also with supportive horses regarding leadership, self-leadership, and communication. Most of what I do for TrueColors is in the different layers of different universities and research institutes. So I work together I give workshops for PhD researchers, postdocs, professors, administrative and technical personnel, mostly Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, and also in Aachen in Germany. How did I end up here? Passion, I think. It's really, I love working with people. It was already when I was a teacher till 2010. Also because I loved working with people, but then there is so much admin stuff, and it's such a narrow frame at times. So now I fully enjoy working with people in academia and being able to make a slight difference for some. So it's a lovely job that I'm doing, certainly.
It definitely looks like it. I would have loved to know when I was doing my PhD, but I didn't.
It's never too late to start, by the way.
Oh, well, for the PhD, it's way too late for me. But to start, yes. But no, wonderful. It's great. Indeed, there are people that likes to do these activities. And Andy, what about you?
So I had kind of a less, I guess, passion didn't lead me here. I think it was initially frustration leading me to where I am. I left academia about 10 years ago. I quit in the middle of a contract because I guess I just became so jaded and so angry, and I just had no way to kind of really see where my career was going, and I didn't see any longevity. And so I just decided to quit. And everyone around me was like, why are you quitting? And I pretended that I knew. I pretended that I knew exactly what I was doing and that I was following a science communication path. And everyone was like, you're so brave. And I'm like, I know. And then I just tried stuff. I started my own science communication startup that COVID killed. Rest in peace. And then I think I took to YouTube about 2 years ago, and I just had one video where I just voiced what I felt like I had missed out on when deciding to do a PhD. And that was called something like 5 Things I Wish I'd Known or No One Told Me before starting a PhD. And that video really took off. And I think maybe I was just really lucky because it captured the frustration that a lot of people were clearly feeling, but lacked the ability to voice publicly for whatever political reasons exist within their own institutions. I've certainly seen, backlash towards academics if they speak out against the big university, So I think I was lucky. I found this audience, and then for the last 2 years, I've just been creating content around making sure that people understand what a PhD is about, the insider tips and tricks that no one really tells you. And now, obviously, with the invention and release of a load of AI tools, now my audience likes to know all the little tricks about using AI to make a PhD work for them. And I've got my YouTube channel and academiainsider.com, and that's where I try my best to essentially help people make their PhD in academia work for them and not just their supervisor or the university. And and now I get to speak to lovely people like you two.
That is fascinating. I mean, I really love your content. I encourage people to go and have a look there after the live because there are a lot of stuff that you can find and you can definitely learn. I would have learned so much at the time, but yes, apparently I was oblivious to all these wonderful resources.
I would have learned. I think I'm just making the videos I wish I had seen beforehand. That's the secret to success.
Exactly. That's why we do TOXstream. It was missing. We wanted, okay, let's do it.
Yes.
Hopefully other people will like it. Okay, cool. Well, now we can start slowly easing within the tips and tricks side of the episode. But first, as always, I'm always interested on the why. On one question, it is a why. Why do we do this? Why do we do whatever we are doing? And that's why it was my first question with you. And the second would be, well, why do you think is a good idea? Why did you agree to be here? What do you think is a good idea to have this sort of discussion? During my intro, I did put out a few points to say, okay, it's a good idea because there is poor work-life balance, there are mental issues, problem within doing the PhD, so we should find some way to help people doing PhD to have a better time. But maybe you also have a different perspective on why do you think is useful to have a PhD survival guide, or at least a conversation on how to make a better journey. Maybe we start with Andy this time, and then we go to Wendy.
Yeah, sure. I'll tell you what, I just think so many people fall into the trap of thinking that, you know, a PhD has to be completed in a certain way, and that if they're not doing it a certain way, they're not good enough, or, you know, all of the weird imposter syndrome things people feel, and we don't talk about it enough. And so the why this is important is because, you know, even so I get invited to give talks at different universities, and even now I have meetings where people say, well, you can't say these things. And I'm like, but that's the reason I'm coming, is to say those things. Like the PhD students want to hear these things, but the supervisors are saying to me via their PhD students, no, you can't say these certain things. And I'm like, that's exactly why I want to say those things, is because, you know, PhD students do have choices. They have options, and they can sort of mold their own career to make sure it fits what they want to do and not just what their supervisor wants, which is get papers, get their etch index up and that sort of stuff. So there are options. There's lots of ways to make your PhD work for you. And unfortunately, the system of academia isn't voicing those, or it wasn't when I was going through, and I'm sure that it's changing now. And that's why it's important to bring this to the surface, because your supervisor is not going to tell you, you know, things that go against their own career progression, when in fact it may be better for you. So yeah, I've been told things like, well, don't tell them they can change their PhD supervisor. Don't change them, they could, you know, because all these PhD students are freaking out because they're like, well, no, I'm going to lose all my students. And I'm like, well, if you're a bad PhD supervisor, you should lose all your students.
That's a good point. No, you're right. You know, they somehow the supervisor are not like an impartial side in this specific discussion, of course.
That's right.
And Wendy?
Yeah, true. It's a very complex thing doing a PhD, and also to move on with the supervisors, often they also don't have a clue, because most of them are not trained as leaders. I often hear them say, I just wanted to become an expert researcher. I just wanted to grow as a researcher, and as a result, I have to increase I have to lead a research group, and I have no clue how to do that. So I think trainings for PhD researchers are also beneficial for their supervisors, who often have to take up leadership on top of everything they have to do. And I think more and more there is awareness of how important good leadership is, and good leadership trainings are for supervisors as well, to get both supervisor and PhD researcher out of the we'll see mode. We'll get there. We'll see how it works out. And to get out of that we'll see mode, I think, is really important. And also, and I agree with Andrew, one of the first things I do when I give any course for PhD researchers is that I write down the word PhD student, I cross out student and replace it by manager. As from now, you're supposed to manage your project and take up ownership and give yourself the mandate to look for what is needed up the hierarchy to make sure that you get what you want. And I think it's important that PhD researchers are somehow guided by that, because for most, it's the first time that they have to that they are in such a big project, and for most of them in a period of their life in which a lot of things change. Marriages, children, buying houses, etc. These are also often, well, side projects of your PhD. So I think it needs, it's a complex thing that you can't say, oh, okay, I step into it and we'll see what works. So I think that's my answer to the why it is important to guide such projects.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's right to point out that indeed it's not just a challenge from a professional point of view, but also from a personal point of view. It's usually a moment where people do stuff. I mean, I moved to Belgium to do my PhD from Italy, and it was big change on top of that. No, thank you for that. And there is another point, another aspect on that is related to, okay, we talk about a survivor guide, successful guide, let's say, and indeed there is the concept of successful. There is the concept that we do this because we reach a specific objective. And I had to say that if I had to think of what it is a successful PhD, I would not be able to say it myself. Because when I was doing the PhD, it was very clear. Well, publish the crap out of it, and if you can do it, then good, it's going to be successful. I don't think it's the case. But I don't have another answer. So I'd like to know your point of view on what would you consider successful from a PhD and in the experience and the people you spoke with. Let's start with Wendy.
I think there are a lot of, in a PhD project, there are a lot of balls to be kept in the air. And I think success means that you more or less found a way to balance all these things to balance your results with your personal well-being, with becoming more of a project manager, etc. So I think the real success is when at the end of your PhD you still feel the captain at the steering wheel of your project / your life. So I think if you manage to become there are a lot of things happening, a lot of external factors that influence your PhD project. It can be behavior of others, it can be funding, it can be stakeholder, there are so many things influencing you. So you often risk to get into a more reactive mode, how to deal with all these things from outside, these external things, and also internal pressure. And I think if you can become more proactive than reactive, and mostly by knowing very well, by developing a professional identity, what kind of a PhD researcher do I want to be, and what is my way of being successful in my PhD project. I think this requires also some reflection, so that you make your own choices freedom within a frame, the frame of your organization, the scope of your supervisor. But if you manage to become more proactive as a PhD researcher, and then you still feel like, hey guys, I'm handling this, and with this I mean both results, publication, but also time management, stakeholder management, and everything. If you are able to say like, hey, I'm still the captain of the ship, then I think you're hugely successful at the end.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes definitely sense. Andy, what's your take on that?
I mean, the thing is I know what the university expects now, and it like the university just wants you to make them look good with publications. The university and your supervisor maybe want to use your results to apply for more grants, and that's kind of where the university stops. And it's weird that we don't put more of a focus on the fact that a PhD can be individualized to make sure that you get what you want out of it. And it's probably because the supervisors don't, and I mentioned the supervisors a lot. I feel like I'm attacking them tonight. And I am. That's it. I'm just going to do it. But they've got no concept, or a lot of them haven't worked outside in industry, haven't worked outside, academia. And it can be really tough to convince someone that in fact you want to go do this other thing, and that you need a couple years of support to make sure that that transition is not only easy, but also that you are wanted in the outside world. So a successful PhD looks to me as, first of all, is however you get to the end is success, right? Like if you crawl across the finish line with no legs, with like, you know, like bruised up, like that's a successful PhD. And I know not everyone has a terrible time, but a lot of people find it very challenging. So just getting to the end is a success, no matter if it's 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. That's super important. And then the extra add-on on an individual level is just making sure that you then have the skills and the connections and the networks then to go on to do what you want. And you don't do what a lot of people end up getting kicked out the other end and going, oh crap, like what do I do? Where do I go? And then end up in this postdoc treadmill holding pattern because they feel like they don't have the skills to escape academia. They don't have the networks or the extra connections to be able to kind of leave the ivory towers. So the postdoc treadmill is just this limbo for people that haven't been given the skills to properly escape, and they're just sort of like on short-term contracts. You know, I've heard up to 10 or 15 years of people just waiting, you know, for the thing that will never happen, but have no other options, or haven't been trained in such a way that they feel confident enough to leave. So yeah, success on those two things, just finishing however you can, and then making sure you've got the skills that enable you to carry on in your life in a way that you want.
Yeah, that's well said as well. Indeed, at the end of the day, if it makes you grow positively or in a way that you think is positive in your life, it's probably worth it. It should be written somewhere when you start a PhD, but that's not what they tell you, unfortunately. Yeah. And do you think this is different from a, let's call it a normal job, whatever it is, a normal job? Because how this is different when you go, because if I'm 24 and I start within a company, it's kind of a given that people will try to help me to develop skills that I needed for me. Maybe in a PhD this is not so clear. I don't know if you have an opinion on that, Wendy.
Yeah, indeed, define normal. Indeed, the normal job. that's something in itself. I think it's really something specific, taking up a PhD, because you step into, well, a highly competitive environment, with, as I mentioned before, leaders who are not all very much trained to lead. You step into that out of your passion. Your passion is your driver. So I think beforehand you have high expectations for yourself and also from your environment. There is much unpredictability, I think, in such a project, and you step into something of which you know that it's most probably temporarily. So for many it is. So I think it is different because you are in. Most often you have to find things out yourself more. You're stepping into an unpredictable situation, driven by passion. But then I see, so I give project management courses for PhD researchers, and also communication skills, conflict management, and negotiation skills. And what I see often, in the second half of the first year, it starts to be like, oh shit, 4 years is not an unlimited capacity of time. I still have my passion, but it's help. that's the first time the help feeling appears. Also, when you move abroad, it can be very lonely at times. So I think it's very important that things are being done to connect PhD researchers. So yes, I think whatever normal is, I think doing a PhD is different and surely needs some framing, some guiding for people to really step into that. Yes, I certainly think it's different.
Mm-hmm. And for you, Andy, did you think about it that sometimes?
I just went into it because I knew I didn't want a normal life. I think I didn't want a job. It sounded so boring. I still don't want a job. That's why I'm on YouTube, I think. Like, normal jobs suck because you have to be somewhere and, well, you know, I'm sure there's some people that like their jobs. But for me, I've got to be somewhere. I've got to answer to someone. I've got to pretend that I'm working even though I'm not. I've got to, you know, quickly close the tabs when someone enters the room. Maybe that's why I'm a terrible employee, because I'm always trying to get away with stuff. But I think, yeah, a lot of people enter a PhD because they do want to delay entering the normal world. And the path of least resistance is laid out in front of them. They're told they can do it. And yeah, I went in after my PhD. I was an explosives chemist in a mine for 13 months. And that wasn't normal, and that was great fun. And then I went back into academia for some strange, I have no idea. I'm thinking back to it, I don't know why I did that. Maybe I was escaping the normal. So yeah, it's not normal because there is in academia, you know, like your supervisor essentially dictates what your day and your group does and what your day's like. You know, that some people end up being micromanaged. Some people end up just being sort of like left alone by a ghost supervisor who disappears. So there is no normal in academia. And, you know, we try to say, stick to 9 to 5, you know, do all that sort of stuff. But when the pressure's on, it can be really hard. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question. It's not normal. And I think maybe it's great to escape the normality. And I certainly, yeah, thrive on non-normal environments.
I like this answer. I like it indeed. It is not normal. It's something else. But I guess that's part of it. That's why we do it. Otherwise, why the hell do we have to suffer so much? But okay, we can now start to move more towards the tips and tricks, or more try to find some concrete ways to help people. And by the way, people, if the audience, if you have a question or if you want to say what it is successful for you, your PhD, you can also write it there. And there is one long question that just arrived as I was saying this, that I want to put it out right away, from Annika, which is just to, I'm going to read it at the moment in which I put it out, and just to see indeed the relationship between supervisor and PhD, which is, yeah, a very important point. So can you elaborate on the power disbalance between, especially in the final phase of the PhD, when the candidate come already this far, and any change in supervision would result in a big time delay. So basically, yes, this balance between how much the supervisor can do on top of their PhD and what the PhD candidate can maybe do to counteract this, maybe, or survive to this. Mm-hmm. Let's start with Andy, then I move to, if you have something to add, Wendy, as well.
All right. Yeah, look, it's really tough, especially in the final phases of your PhD. Time's against you, and your supervisor will dictate essentially when you finish by allowing you to submit your thesis, or signing off on certain chapters, or not reading certain things for a very long time, as I know other people have experienced. And you're down to, I guess, a limited series of choices, and the only choice for you in the final stage really is you've got there, you just have to finish. I mean, you can kick up a hoo-ha, you can start to try to change supervisors, but I think in the final stages, you don't want that big time delay, and maybe placating your supervisor as much as you can, whilst also making them aware of how important it is that you finish at a certain time. And maybe your choice is only between bad and bad, and it can be really tough. But yeah, just pushing through, finishing any way you can, and it's just part of the weird politics of academia. And it's a terrible power imbalance. And hopefully people from my videos understand the importance of selecting a supervisor, understanding the type of supervisor they are. And yeah, sorry, Annika, I don't have much more for you other than it's really tough. And I hope that you can at least communicate the importance of finishing at a certain time and pushing through with whatever challenges you've got. And the strange thing is, in academia all the time, we always think the hardest thing is going to be like dealing with, or getting the results and analyzing them. And it's going to be this like crazy, really hard intellectual thing, which it is, of course, in many ways. But the main struggle is always people. It just seems to be the one sort of like your uniting factor, which is people suck no matter where they are, and someone's always going to try to, you know, be a pain in the ass. And this is just an example, and hopefully you build the skills that, you know, to navigate that politically. And Wendy, I was going to ask you actually, like, I always talk about how hard it is to work with certain supervisors, like personality types. How receptive are they to coaching? Are they receptive?
I think more receptive than your trauma might tell you.
Yeah.
No, I do a lot of individual coachings with supervisors, and also give programs as leading a research team or etc. And a lot of them are very open, more and more, I would say. And of course, you have these dinosaurs who still are in the top hierarchy, are in the hierarchical way of guiding. And I think I see more and more awareness of doing things differently. And I think also PhD researchers can be a help in that, because my thoughts about Annika's questions are twofold. So I think, first of all, it shows the need of making good agreements in the beginning and throughout the guidance, so that that you notice things before they escalate. Because what often happens at the end of a project is that, of course, because of time pressure and the stress of the deadline, existing irritations, they explode. So I think it's very important, and that's also what we work on, to, as from the start, also don't only talk about the results, etc., but also what guidance do I need? How the interpersonal thing is very important. And if indeed you end up in a situation like you, Annika, that in the end it is so stressful and this power disbalance becomes really big, I think it's about choosing your battles and see what can I still have impact on, and what can't I have impact on, and how to deal with that, so that that you can, and also dare to give yourself the mandate to step in with solutions, with suggestions, etc. Try to think about okay, what's in it for him if I do it this way, etc. So my answer is twofold. Like, invest in guidance as soon, and in the interpersonal relationship from the start. And when you arrive really at such a power disbalance as described by Annika, choose your battles and see, okay, what can I have impact on? That would be my thought. Yeah.
That's a great comment, and it rings also with the situation that I had at some point. I mean, when I finished my PhD, I was finished PhD. I remember that when I decided that I wanted to finish, I really just walked in the office of my supervisor and telling him, "I'm done. That's it. Now I'm gonna write the thesis, and that's it." And I really told him, I don't think I can be more productive staying here for one more year, just doing experiment for you. But I guess it depends on your supervisor.
And also, I'm just reminded of another incident that I was privy to during my PhD, where there was, let's say there's like 8 chapters in one of my friend's thesis, and one of them wasn't super sort of like convincing anyway to include. And so the PhD supervisor said, "Oh, look, let's stay on, do another 6 months and finish this." And she said, no. She said, great, like she put a lot of effort into this chapter, but she just took it out. And I remember the supervisor being like, what? Like, this never happens. You know, like, get rid of it. You know, their default is let's do more experiments. And this person just said, well, if this is something that is important to you, you can do that later, but that's not for my thesis. And so you can take those decisions just to be like, okay, if that's going to be extra work, that's gone. That's no longer part of my thesis story. And I thought it was incredibly brave of this person, but they did it and they moved on. So just making sure that you have got your own agency and you can say, well, fine, if you want that, That's not going to be me doing that. And this is how I'm going to get rid of it.
Yeah, it is your time after all. So you really are the only one that can decide if it's useful or not. No, great. I mean, I saw that you already ended up in the more concrete discussion. But since we don't have too many questions from the audience yet, apart from Annika, I have a very short video to show you because I always have a little vlog to show the new episode. Last week I went to Dublin. There was a conference, so I had the chance to speak with a few former PhD students there. And I asked them directly what did they think about their PhD, and so we can use these to launch within the next phase. So we are going to be back in a few minutes. Just stay with us. Today, we are in Dublin.
And we are here to participate in the SETAC annual meeting, one of the biggest conferences on ecotoxicology in the world. Hundreds of scientists will join this 5-day event, and we're going to ask some of them a few questions on their PhD.
That's not natural. So for me, I think the best thing is about having resilience, because when everything's going wrong, it really sucks. And they always say that repeating the same thing a million times over is insanity, but sometimes I just think that that is research.
Something that I'd want to know at the start would be how difficult the end is. So I'd recommend at the start of your PhD, make sure that you really enjoy your subject so that you still enjoy it enough at the end to finish. And I think it's definitely a test of endurance, which somebody told me at the start, and I definitely kept in mind at that end.
Your PhD, you will hate your project. So you need to really love your supervisor and get on really well with them, because they're the thing that will get you through to that finish line.
My best advice for starting PhD students is to have a serious conversation with your advisor about work-life balance and their expectations for you to work on holidays and over weekends.
If you ever feel lost, eat some chocolate.
Okay. So first
nice
reaction.
video, Matteo. Nice
Thank
video.
First reaction on the thing that they said. If it's something that you see yourself in, or maybe the people you work with, or something that really like, okay, I never heard someone say like this. For example, I'm assuming the chocolate. The first time that you hear someone giving a gastronomical advice for PhD, but why not? Wendy.
Yeah, PhD is top sports. Doing a PhD is top sports, and I think a lot of things. There are a lot of things that you have to do in top sport that also count for a PhD. And the first thing is know yourself very well, know what you need, and indeed love what you do, but make sure you are ready to kind of dose your passion, dose your energy, dose your time. Because if you jump in out of mere enthusiasm, you will tire yourself out. So I think the analogy with top sports is a good one. I can relate to many of the things these people said in the video. And the one person said something about be very clear about expectations, and I think that is very important. Clarity about what can I expect from you, what do you expect from me, and the thing is that always starts with you. You have to be clear about your own expectations, because what is not clear to you can be filled in by others. So that's also one of the first things that I always say when people feel overwhelmed and too much steered by environment or supervisor. Like, do you have a sound answer to the question, what do you want? What is important for you? What does a good work-life balance look like for you? So the clarity on how things are for you. I think that's one of the many answers possible, and one thing that struck me or that triggered me in by listening to the or watching the video.
Yeah, and for you, Andy, some of them were in your top 5 video of things to consider doing your PhD or not?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I also think that if you are so inclined, I think we talked about chocolate, but I also think whatever way you can escape is very important. Whether or not it's hanging out with friends, finding that balance, that's very important. So having a life outside of academia was certainly something that got me through, and made sure that I was able to see it as a marathon and finish the marathon instead of trying to sprint every day. So I think that was echoed in a lot of what people said. And I definitely 100% endorse eating a lot of chocolate.
Well, we are in Belgium, so we are happy with that.
Yes.
Yeah, Australian chocolate, and this is a hot take. Australian chocolate is rubbish.
Okay.
Yeah, we have the best.
I never had the pleasure.
Don't bother. Don't bother. Just stay in Belgium, eat the chocolate there.
Good to know. Okay, I would have 1,000 questions to ask you, but there are people already that ask from the audience, so I would go from them because they're rather interesting. This one for Padma is super interesting because she's asking advices on someone who is trying to start a PhD, but already with his own idea in mind. So she has a research idea and she wants to find someone to do with these specific things. If you would have some advice for her on that specific journey. Let's start with Andy this time.
Yeah, look, your own research idea is tricky because you're trying to find, essentially, you've got the puzzle piece and you're trying to find the person that it fits into. And I would say that don't necessarily look at the person to start with, but look at what skills you need to bring together to make that research idea a possibility. And then find a team or a place, a university, a faculty that would best allow you to, bring together these specific ideas. I think that PhD arguably is getting more multi-faceted with many fields coming together. So looking to build your ideal research team probably is no longer looking at an individual researcher, but building up a place and the expertise that you can thrive. So it's much tougher if you're bringing your own research idea, but it's just a process of going, seeing what people have got, how they can help you bring this idea to fruition, and just keep digging until you find that perfect place and combination of expertise. And you can do it across universities as well. It's much harder, but if you can find people to co-supervise, and it's just about just keep going until you find that perfect little collection of place and people.
Yeah, persevere, as it was in the video as well. And Wendy?
Yeah, I can relate to that. First of all, I would like to repeat how important it is. If you have your own idea, make sure that you have it very clear, so that you can, instead of asking for, can I yeah, where can I plant my idea, that you can check whether is this is this fertile ground for my idea. Next to that, I agree with Andy. You always step into someone else's dream, so the chance that you will be fully able to to work on your idea, that chance is not that high. I think it's also important to have a clear idea of what I want and install a maximum and a minimum. Like, okay, ideally, if I have a project in mind, ideally in my PhD, I will be able to achieve that and that and that. Minimally, for me, I would really love to be able to do that and that, so that you have a scope instead of either it fits or it doesn't. And that, I think, gives a little bit more space to find the right place to live your part of your dream. That would be something I think of.
Giving you a frame to work within probably helps to find the balance. And related to that, I think this is also a question, I really see myself in that a lot at the time from Tasmin, who some ways to help people to find out if the supervisor they're speaking with, the potential supervisor they're speaking with, could be a positive one or not. Because indeed, interviews, everybody is behaving perfectly. We are selling ourselves there. How can we find out before signing up for the PhD if this is a good fit or not? Wendy, maybe we start from you first.
Yeah. First of all, a supportive supervisor, no one will be supportive all the time. In stress situations, it will be always a fertile breeding ground for irritations. I think besides gut feeling in such a first interview, there are also prepare some questions yourself that you can ask about things that are important for you. If you're in a very busy period and I'm stuck with some things, what are how are things taken care of then? It's a very general question, but prepare some questions yourself so that you about things that are important for you in guidance, because supportive in itself has many different definitions. What supportive is to me is not supportive to anyone else. So supportive for one person might be like, I want my supervisor to give me as much freedom as possible. That would be supportive. And another one would say, yeah, I really want, I hope my supervisor has some kind of an open door policy that I can, whenever I start panicking, that I can reach him or her. And they will call that supportive. So know for yourself what does supportive mean for you? How does that translate in kinds of behavior? And allow yourself also to ask questions in such an interview, so that that's also that part of being proactive. Don't only be the ones who answers questions, but also ask questions. Check whether in certain situations that are important for you, what might be the reaction of that potential supervisor. And of course, and don't only listen to the answer, but also have a look at his nonverbal communication. That's to get the whole picture, let's say. So that would be a few things that pop up right away.
Mm-hmm. Andy?
That was a perfect answer. Yeah, I feel like, different supervisors fit different students, and there are little tiny, like, I mean, we talk about gut feeling, you know, so if you like someone, don't, but there's lots of little like red flags that you can pick up on even before the interview. Like, did they turn up on time? Is that important? You know, like, do they value your time as much as that, you know, you turning up on time? And also just like this one supervisor that I'm thinking of used to send emails at like 4 a.m. right? And so these little insights into how they live their life, and quite often that means they expect that from their students. So you can get a sense of their work ethic and those little things that they do, you know, and just sort of like build up that kind of whole picture of who they are and what they expect. But nothing beats asking them questions, being completely clear with what you expect. And if it is not a match, it doesn't have to be a match. You can walk away from a supervisor. When I chose my PhD, I sat down with probably 3 supervisors, and I just chose a project that not only interested me, but I just tried to choose a group of people that I felt supported by and that I just liked being around for that short amount of time. And it will change and flow, and the dynamic will change over time. But yeah, just being super clear with what you want is the only way to really find that perfect fit.
Yeah, I agree. And if I can add a little thing, I would say also to speak, if you can, speak with the people in the lab, the other member of the lab, because they might feel a little bit more at ease with answering some of your questions and can give you, because you're going to spend a lot of time with them. And the social aspect is crucial if you want to get to the end. And there is another point that I found it also quite interesting from Eckingwale, I think it's the way in which you pronounce your name. So if it's not, basically, what would you say to someone that is doubting of starting a PhD or not? So what would be the most enticing motivation to go for a PhD? I would say this is the point. So if you're not totally sure, why should you do a PhD, yes or not? What would you reply, Andy?
That is a tough question, isn't it? If you've look, everyone has little doubts, and I'm sure that even going into my PhD, I was like, oh, you know, do I really want to do this? We put a lot of emphasis on this idea of passion, right? And I think it's this romantic idea that you need to be like emotionally involved with your ideas. And, you know, for me, passion is the thing that happens in between kissing and offering to sleep in the wet spot. You know, like that's where it ends. And I think stepping outside of the passion and being like, okay, maybe this isn't you know, I'm not passionate about it, but it's interesting enough for me. It's good enough. There's enough green lights here for me to give it a go. And after that first year, I think that's a great place to then decide, okay, this isn't, and you're much more kind of, you got more data points to work with. But yeah, it's tough. We do put a lot of emphasis on passionate, but look outside of that emotional thing and just look to see if it satisfies career goals, if it's actually something you feel you want to do, or whether or not you feel like it's an external pressure of people being like, you're clever, you should do a PhD, all of that stuff. So it is tough. And also starting one and finding out it isn't for you and leaving, I think the stigma is decreasing as well. So everyone has doubts. If you really can get past the passion thing, why not give it a go? And yeah, start from there. You know, obviously, I don't know their specific sort of like environment they're making this decision in, but yeah, that would be, I guess, what I would say.
Yeah, no, beautiful. Wendy?
Yeah, for me too. I think, yeah, passion is one, of course. Wanting to make a difference to the organization, to the world, whatever, however big your ambitions are, and be willing to take consequences that go with it. To go back to the top sports, it's nice to run that race in the Olympic Games, but the way towards that, it impacts your social life. You have to watch your diet, your diets, etc. So being willing to take the consequences. Apart from that, I think it's a great it can be a great investment in yourself, self-development, influencing your environment, etc. But I totally agree with what Andy says. This is not something, you are not sentenced to, yeah, you should, whatever happens, you have to go till the end. Know that you, at every time, you have freedom of choice, that it's at the moment it doesn't seem to work, that you can always take the decision to go another direction, so that it feels, you don't know what you step into, it's new. So don't force yourself to make the right decision, whatever that is, by starting your PhD. Start from passion, start from wanting to make a difference, start from, okay, I want this challenge, and then yeah, listen very good to the signals of your life, of your system, of your health, of your energy, whatever, and make the decision. The decision of stepping into a PhD is not only made at the start, I guess. You have to make that decision over and over again. Maybe each day, each month, each week of your PhD, you have to decide, do I still say yes to this project, to this way of living? I don't think it's a decision you only make at the beginning.
That's a great point. Yes, it's a continuous effort. It's not just at the beginning. And I'm just going to pick one more thing from the audience because we already passed the time that I was supposed to keep you. But the conversation is just so cool that I like to go for forever and ever. A quick shout out to Eleonora, who says that she always has
I saw them. They were, yeah.
Well done. That's important.
They're not from Australia, probably then.
This is not a question, but I like what Marcia was saying, that she suggested to look at a PhD as like a startup, meaning I think as you have to put so much effort because you are starting a huge project on yourself. I'm not sure I agree on that too much, completely at least. And I'd like to know what you think about it. If when I start a PhD, then do I have to give 100% of my personal time, effort, energy on that? Or a PhD is part of life and there is something else? I don't know who I asked before last time. Wendy.
There are many different ways of doing a PhD. So in giving these courses for PhD researchers since 2014, I see a lot of possibilities passing. There are PhD researchers who really put their lives on hold while doing their PhD. And there are others who say, for me, it's I don't work weekends, I don't work evenings, and it's my decision. So whatever, I'm not going to quit my hobbies. I think it's a choice. And also here, what you are not clear about will be filled in by others. So I think that's one part of preparing for doing a PhD is, what place do I want it to have in my life? And I know people who, of those people who really put their lives on hold, but it's really a choice, then okay, but then also you choose for the consequences of that choice. And that is important to keep in mind. Also, those who say, I don't work weekends, I don't work evenings, for me, my PhD project is a 9 to 6 job or so. That also comes with consequences. So I would say, make a choice in that, and a choice that you can always adjust along the ride. But I think it's an important thing to think about, like what is my professional identity? What place do I want that PhD project to have? I think it's it has to be a conscious decision, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And for you, Andy, was the PhD something you have to give the soul to, or maybe you can keep a little bit for something else?
I don't think I thought of it like that at all. But some people do. Like, I've seen PhD students as I was a postdoc who worked and played hard. Like, they worked their asses off in the lab. They'd get there early. They'd go home, have lunch in the dinner in the evening. They'd come back until like 11 o'clock at night, and they did that for like days on a time, and then they disappear for 2 days on a bender, and you wouldn't see them. So this was a sort of person that thrived on that all or nothing. You've just got to find your own balance. I do want to touch on the thing as like a startup, thinking of it like a startup, and there's a lot of similarities, at least in my experience, from starting your own business and a PhD in terms of the principles that you can sort of like inject, such as the 80-20 principle. What's working that you can double down on to make sure you get a successful, PhD with results. You have to consider it, you have to remain agile. You have to consider that it is going to take a load of different decisions, and you've got to hope and train yourself to make sure that at least 10% of those decisions are the right ones. And you'll make like 90% bad decisions, but they won't outweigh the 10 important ones that, you know, like, so it's about identifying all these different strategies, and reading startup books is certainly something I think PhD students would probably get a lot from in terms of like mindset. Unfortunately, you know, probably like most startups, PhD students aren't going to get rich from this. So it's just like a startup in that sense.
I agree. No, was wonderful. Okay, I really kept you way too long for what we agreed. I have one last question for you, and then I'm gonna free you, which would be, if you want to give, let's say, one last advice, or the most important advice to the people that are listening to us, which one would it be? And maybe if you have some ideas of where they can find more information on that after this video. Andrew.
Oh, look, one bit of advice. That's tough. That's so tough. But I think it would probably be along the lines of making sure that you communicate as effectively as possible with the one person that's going to really decide how well your PhD goes, both for you and in general, and that is your supervisor. I cannot stress enough that the importance of that relationship. And also, like, I fell out with my supervisor in my, I think it was my second year or the end of my first year, something like that. But we remained as great professional kind of colleagues because we were able to negotiate things, and you know, they were fantastic in getting stuff back to me, blah, blah, blah. So you can have a breakdown of friendship, I guess, but you can still remain professional and keep trudging forward. So making sure that you dedicate a bit of time to that relationship all the way through, being super clear. I think that would be the number one take home thing if you're going to focus on anything.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And indeed, if you have doubts, you can always go and check out Andy's channel on YouTube, which is, you're going to find plenty of information there. And for you, Wendy?
Well, I'm going to give a visual advice. I always have it here, and I can't but say, invest in yourself. This is a tumble clown, and I hope that as a PhD researcher, you, by investing in yourself, in knowing what you want, what your needs are, in investing in your core, because that's what keeps this guy resilient. What do I need? What do I want? In always keeping a 360-degree view on what are other options, what can I do. And you see his smile, and he also has a little music. Keep on looking for the lightness in everything you do around your PhD project. So I think that's a bit of the summary for me. Like, keep on investing in yourself. Also see your PhD project as an investment in yourself. And as a tip, I like the books of Patricia Gosling on mastering your PhD, and some articles also on solution-focused topics, like how to always be solution-oriented, how to look future-oriented, let's say. Do good monkey management, don't take problems for other people on your shoulder, etc. I think that are all things that may help.
Definitely. Thank you very much. I'm just gonna put it quickly on the screen. If you wanna have a look at this, is how you can find the Handy YouTube channel, Dr. Andrew Stapleton. There are really plenty of videos. They are super useful, so please check them out. Even if you finish your PhD, you may find out what you should have done and have a little bit more regrets, like me. And if you want to also have a look at what Colors is doing and what Wendy is doing there, this is also their website. They do a terrific work, so please check them out. I'm gonna put all the links in the description of the video eventually. Okay, I think that was it. It's already 13:40. I didn't eat still this morning, so I'm slowly passing out. But it was wonderful. I really love this discussion. I think it was amazing. I really thank you a lot for being here with me for these hours, and I hope you had fun and you find it useful as well.
It was really good. Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks again, Matteo, and it was nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Wendy.
Okay, that was it for today, not tonight. For today, we are gonna be back as usual next month. I don't know yet when, but just stay tuned on our LinkedIn and Twitter and on our social media. We're gonna announce both the topic and the date of the next TOXstream online. So this is the end. I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something. I definitely had, and I hope to see you soon. Just don't leave us yet, because we have a very last video to show you, a few minutes with the last chronicle from our artist Aurelia on a few key figures on PhD and women, which you might find it very interesting. So see you next time.
Hello and welcome in this new inCLUEded chronicle for TOXstreams. Today we will talk about gender equality in higher education. 1678. In 1678, Elena Lucrezia Cormaro Piscopia, an Italian aristocrat, was the first ever woman to receive a PhD. But one should know that it took years of negotiation by her very rich and connected father for her knowledge and academic accomplishments to be rightfully honored. And ever then, she was never allowed to teach or practice. 9. It is the number of women that managed to receive a PhD from this date, 1678, to 1800. 3%. After that, more women tried to access higher education and fought for the right to learn, mainly using a security breach in the university's rule. In fact, as they never thought women would want to register, they never thought of writing down that they couldn't. So those women were called pioneers. In fact, pioneers were still very marginal until the second half of the 20th century. Only 3% in French universities in 1900. It took until 1921 for an American university to give a PhD to an African American woman. Actually, 3 women earned the distinction that year. Sadie Tanner Mossel Alexander in economics, Georgiana Simpson in German, and Eva Dykes in English. This is without mentioning that the struggle would not end with being handed over their diploma. These women would have to face lifelong opposition to be able to learn, work, and to be known for their discoveries and accomplishments. 50% and over. The percentage of female students in US universities now is up to 50% and over, but it took a very long time to level the field, and women reached that 50% representation only over the past decade. And what about Europe nowadays? 320,000. This is the number of female students in Europe in 2020, out of 651,000 in total. Which means that on an academic level, women are already less represented depending on the field. In research and innovation studies, women represent 48.1% of doctoral graduates. And the hiccup really shows when we look at the employment field. 32.8%. Women represent only 1/3 of the total population of researchers at the European level. But now, guess what the bigger problem is? The pay gap. 12.7% is the average pay gap in Europe, and it has only changed minimally over the last decade. Let it be said that this gender gap is very different from a country to another. Only over 5% in Belgium, 15% in France, and over 18% in Germany. Action 13 is the name that was given by the European Commission to the plan dedicated to encourage women's participation in STEM studies and careers and ensure enhanced inclusion of women into the digital economy by 2027. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to learn more about those 10 key figures I mentioned, you can click on the link, and I'll see you next time.